All right, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to class. Today we are going to be learning about Chicano music, all the way from the 70s to contemporary music. We do have two guest speakers with us today. And I am going to introduce our first guest speaker with you first, okay? So we'll get started with that. Make sure you're taking your notes, be ready for discussion, all that good stuff, okay? So with us today, we have Cirenio Rodriguez, who is a retired professor from CSU Sacramento, UC Davis, and UC Santa Barbara, and Woodland Community College. He was the former director of La Casa de la Raza in Santa Barbara, and he was active during the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 70s. He immigrated to the United States at the age of 14. Rodriguez and his family worked in the fields every summer. So I have that in common with you, Cirenio, as well. Thank you so much, Cirenio, for being here with us today. We are so much looking forward to your presentation so that we can learn about the music that came out of the Ventura, Santa Barbara areas from the 1960s and 70s. Go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to you. Thank you for being with us.
Is the class out of Channel Islands? Out of the university?
Yes,
then?
yes, but this is from Channel Islands University.
You know, I almost became a vice president there many years ago.
Oh, really? Okay, good to know.
But you know, my daughters moved to town with the grandkids, and that stopped everything. Just I stayed. So anyway, gracias for the invitation. And what I like to do is share with the people, the students, the rich Mexican cultural tradition of oral tradition of music, poetry, and folklore all in one uh, by sharing with them at least one song, a corrido that was written, performed, and recorded in 1979 and 80 in Santa Barbara about an event that took place in Ventura County, specifically in Rancho Cespe. But before I get to that, I want to also share with the students a brief history of Mexican music. Mexican music is very varied, you know, and it has its roots 1,000 of years back before the Europeans arrived to this part of the world with its floricanto, the now what tradition of poetry and music. And I'm sure that, you know, the students can follow up and research what floricanto means, but it's a way of communicating with the gods in a sense. Uh, so there is this real rich tradition of uh, telling stories and singing and dancing and music that comes in from our natives, but also from the colonial invaders that came here in the 1600s, specifically the Spaniards. They also brought their music, they also brought their culture, and certainly, you know, they were here for over 300 years. They must have influenced, you know, something in terms of the modern Mexican culture and music and tradition. So the Spaniards brought with them their seguidillas, music, fandango, and fandango is still a term that is very used, you know, in many aspects of our community. Zapateados, you know, as well, and romances. Uh, During the colonial times, our ancestors, you know, once the Spanish were there, also continued to perform and to run and to write their own music and their own poetry. And there is a uh, body of knowledge, body of music written by native people during the colonial times. And a scholar by the name of Miguel León Portilla has recorded them, has documented them in this particular book. You know, there's 3 volumes of Cantares Mexicanos. Uh, but there were other European influence on Mexican music, both in the south, the central, and the north of Mexico, all of Mexico. Uh, the waltz, there is a very famous waltz sobre, you know, in Mexico, el chotis, as well. The Germans brought to the northern frontier of Mexico the accordion and other instruments and they brought the polkas, redobas, that is very much part of the norteño musical styles. Mexican music was influenced not only by the Europeans, but by the natives and by the Africans. The Spanish music of seguidillas, fandangos, and zapateados were transformed into jarabes, jaranas, huapangos, sones, y gatos, and the romances influenced the transformation into corridos. Mexico has very different types of Mexican music, and one of the most significant one is el son. And there is a very popular son that you can hear in the mariachi that almost any mariachi group anywhere in the world will know it. It's El Sol de la Negra. You can download it and it's about our Afro-Mexican heritage, but it's a son de la negra. But the son appeared in the 17th century and is a fusion of indigenous, Spanish, and African tradition. This style of music exhibits a lot of variations from region to region and rhythm as well, and also an instrumentation. Some of these regionals include the Son Jarocho, the Son Jalisciense, Son Huasteco, Son Calentano, y Son Michoacano. And out of the Son Jalisciense, we get and música ranchera is one of the most popular forms of music. And love and amor y desamor and many other things. So I remember as a young man, when going to the university, we would have parties with the Latino Americano compañeros. At the very end, when we had a few more drinks, we ended up listening to José Alfredo Jiménez of canciones rancheras de amor y desamor. This type of music was started in Mexico, certainly during the Mexican Revolution. Now the corrido, which is I'm going to talk a little bit more, derives back. There are two theories as to where the corrido was born, and one of them says that it derives out of the Spanish romance, and another theory says that it derives out of the floricanto or out of the indigenous musical and poetic traditions. I had concluded in my own mind that the corrido is mestizo creation that is both influenced by the native and by the Europeans. And I'm not going to get into some of the reasons other than to say that there are many or different explanations as to where it started. There's another one, Americo Paredes contended, which is a Chicano scholar, that the corrido started in the Southwest in the 1840s with the occupation of the United States in the Southwest. But there's evidence that the corrido started even years before that. And there is a Mexican poetisa, a poet, a feminist woman by the name of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. And in her days, she talks about the corrido already, hundreds of years before, or at least 100 years before 1840s. So the corrido, it's an oral tradition of documenting things that happen in our community. And the themes of the corrido varied from historical corridos to narco corridos and anything in between. There are corridos about women, about animals, about caballos, about perros, and about, you name it, events, accidents, whatever the theme happens to be. The common people write the corridos, and 90% of the time they're never recorded, they're never documented, they only share among their own people. Now, in terms of I want to talk about the types of musical Mexican groups. Like I said, Mexico is a very large, diverse country, and its diversity, it's also expressed in its music, but also in the musical groups and musical styles, from the mariachi, norteño, bandas, jarocho, marimbas, trios, and within the last 50 years, rock and roll, rock and rolleros in Espanol. And there are other styles of music that the Mexicanos play, such as uh, cumbias, which is Colombian, boleros, which is Cuban. But nevertheless, the Mexican musicians have Mexicanized those géneros of música. No, I want to get a little bit into corridos y canciones de Aztlan, certainly about the corrido. In the 1970s, and I lived in Ventura and Santa Barbara County working, organizing campesinos in Ventura County in the early 1970s, 73, 74. And then from 76 to 1981, I worked as the director of La Casa de la Raza. But in 1968, I went to Santa Barbara as a student at UCSB, and where I got my BA, master's, and a doctorate. But when I was working in those counties, I became aware that there was a tradition of Chicano, Mexicano corridistas, people from the community writing corridos. Simultaneously, during those years, I became aware that out of Oxnard, there was a Spanish speaking radio station, and on Sundays they would have Dia de Aficionados, which is talent shows. They would invite the Mexican community to come and perform during tardeadas in restaurants and bars, or in a park where the radio station would invite the people, and they would come in, with their own musical instruments or with their own mariachis or grupos, and would sing, and then at the end of it, of course, there was a premio as to who was the best singer of the best group. So I knew that in Oxnard on Sundays there was this uh, uh, mechanism of sharing the music and sharing the talent idea, because I would hear, and as I talked to the campesinos that I was working with, that they were writing their own corridos. So I came up with the idea one time as executive director of La Casa de la Raza to collect, document, publish, and record corridos that were original from Ventura and Santa Barbara County. And so I approached the radio station and I asked them if they were willing to be the mechanism by which it would be done. So for several weeks, they announced it on the radio and invited corridistas. The only thing that I ask of the corridistas is that if they wanted to perform, they have to give me the written work. And I promised them that if it was possible, I would seek funding for the project to be able to record at least 10 to 12 corridos and to publish them all, which I was able to do it with grants from the National Endowment of the Arts and the California Arts Council, and also the Santa Barbara Foundation in Santa Barbara, and gave me the money to hire a coordinator and to do all the technical aspects of it. And it ended up with a book that I share with your instructor, that it's online, and she's willing, and anyone that wants a copy can have a copy downloaded and keep it for your own records.
I did put it in the chat, everyone. The PDF that he's referring to, Corridos y Canciones de Aztlan, it's in the chat. So you're welcome to click on that and download it. It's a great resource.
Yeah, and if there are any specific aspects of the analysis of certainly the introduction. The introduction to the book was done by Dr. Luis Leal. Now, Dr. Luis Leal was a visiting professor at UCSB, and he ended up staying there for, I don't know, at least 20, 30 more years after he retired. And he is a international known scholar of Chicano literature. But before that, he made his name in the world in the analysis of the cuento mexicano, and he's cited by anybody in Mexican literature has always, because the Mexican publishing companies would come to him and say, Don Luis Leal, would you write a book on Carlos Fuentes from this particular aspect? And he would go out and do it, and highly well-published individual. So I approached him and he agreed to do the analysis of the corridos that were submitted to the project and to do an introduction. Now, simultaneously during the 1970s, certainly the mid-1970s, the Union of Campesinos led by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta came into Ventura County and began to organize the workers, to bring them into the union. And I had worked with these workers from Moore Park to Saticoy, Santa Paula, Oxnard, and Ventura. And and many of them began to join the union. Well, in Rancho Césped, which is the corrido that I'm going to try to play, which is on the way from Ventura to Santa Paula, it's closer to Santa Paula, the campesinos lived in housing that was provided by the ranchers. It wasn't a labor camp, but it was a camp housing provided by the growers themselves. When the campesinos organized and they joined the union, the growers sold the land to somebody else, and then the new owner kicked them out, evicted them, and the campesinos fought back. They didn't take it. They fought back and organized. And during the period of time when they were fighting and protesting the illegal eviction of the campesinos, an elderly person, campesino, protested by committing suicide. He poured gasoline on himself and lit a match right in the middle of the village, to show his displeasure with the illegal occupation. And one of the corridos is not the one I'm going to play, but one of them kind of directly talks about that as well. So Rancho Césped became a hotspot in organizing and protesting, during the 1978-79 periods in Ventura County. And the corrido that I'm going to play, I want to see if I can find it in here. Do you want me to share screen to check into that? Okay. Desktop. Okay. Rancho Césped.
Año de 1979 llegó el 16 de enero, una tragedia pasó. Los dueños de Rancho Césped tomaron su decisión. Vendieron el Rancho Césped porque no querían la unión. A todos los compañeros los llamaron en reunión para darles la sorpresa, para darles el cortón. Para darles el cortón. El supervisor y otros entregaron los papeles con pocos centavos a todos los trabajadores que tenían como esclavos. Nos mandaron unas cartas con policías de cartón. En tal fecha nos decían: dejaremos meditación. Fíjense muy bien, señores, lo que les deseo cantar. Que César Chávez nos guíe para poderles ganar. Todos estos rancheros que nos quieren explotar. Señores, yo en Dios confío y en toda esta gran cuestión, y que viva el señor Chávez y que viva nuestra unión. Aquí termina el corrido de un humilde servidor, que lo cante con cariño, que lo canten con amor, 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 que lo canten.
So there you have it. It's one of 10 corridos that were recorded, and they made a very limited number of albums, and they're no longer available. But I had a friend of mine do a recorded it and gave me I have it on my computer, so I'm gonna try to figure out how to send it to you, Vero. All of them.
Yes,
they were-
please do. I would love that. Would love that. Just for those of us that are not Spanish speakers, can you maybe summarize the content of that song for us?
Well, the content of the song starts with a welcoming, with an introduction saying, in the year so and so and so, this happened. It tells you the year and the event, what happened in Rancho Césped, where the growers themselves sold the land where the campesinos live, and the new owner kicked them. And then they talks about why did they do that? Is because they joined the union, and they protested and they demanded, and then it goes through the history of that struggle, and then at the end, like a very classical corrido, it has a despedida, a farewell, and the one that says the farewell is the corridista himself, the one that writes the corrido, and he evokes God and all those type of things, and and a corrido it's a poem that is accompanied by music. So it's poetry and music. And this is why I say that to some extent, it has its relationship to Floricanto, as well as maybe the content and some of the style is from our Native American ancestors, but the structure, the format, it's from the Spanish Romance. So it's a mestizo manifestation of our cultura. It cannot be more Mexican than that. Of all of the types of Mexican music, the corrido is, in my view, and the ranchera are probably the most ones that symbolize and represents Mexican culture.
Thank you for that explanation. So I'm going to give you all a little bit more background on that concept of floricanto. And in Nahua, our indigenous language, you say in Xochitl, in Cuicat. And that concept of floricanto is a representation of all of the arts, whether they're visual arts or performing arts, music, dance, all of the arts, poetry, etc. And so for our Mesoamerican Nahua ancestors, the arts were of great importance, and it was embedded in everything and everywhere of our culture. And so you see that how it's been passed down through generations, because as a people, we're still so artistic and so creative, right? With musics and art and dance and everything you can imagine, right? So that's just a really big part of our culture. And it was also a way for our ancestors, their belief was that it was a way for us to connect with that divine, that sacred energy of creation, right? It was our connection to be in that zone as we're creating these things. And as we're speaking from the heart, through our music, through our dance, through our poetry, through our visual arts, all of that was always speaking from the heart. And it was looked at as the only real truth on earth, is that artistic expression, because you can't lie when you're expressing yourself in an artistic way. You have to first converse with your heart in order for you to come up with some kind of artistic expression. And so that was like the real, the most raw truth that exists on earth. And so art is very important to us. And then the other thing about the corridos and the music from the 1960s and 70s, keep in mind that that was a whole different time, a whole different era, right? Where there was no social media, no internet. Today, anybody can create a song and upload it onto their personal YouTube channel or put it on all their social media platforms. And you know what I mean? And sometimes there are some that become really popular in our spread, right? And so that's what we're all used to today. But back then, it was super difficult to get any airtime on the radio. And the fact that Cirenio was able to convince a radio station to play these songs, and then he found resources to make sure that they recorded these songs to be able to play on the radio, and that they're recorded right now, they're documented, so that all these years later, and the year 2020 from 1970, he can share that recording with this class. That's amazing. Like, that's just amazing. And the fact that our people have always been so creative and resourceful to be able to document their history, right? So we don't have the resources to document our history the way that quote unquote scholars do through a university or through Western methods. We as a people, it's still difficult for us to have those resources, to have access to those resources when we compare ourselves to other groups of people in this country. So imagine back then, and we're talking about farm workers who have like very, very, very little resources, enough to barely just survive, right, day to day. And so documenting their history through corridos is just so genius and creative and resourceful. So thank you so much, Cirenio, for, man, that's huge what you did. That's a huge contribution to our people and to the history of Ventura County, Santa Barbara County. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Cirenio?
I was wondering, could you tell me a little bit more about the marimba bands?
Well, the marimba bands are a style of music that is played in southern Mexico, in Chiapas and Central America, and it's very beautiful music. I mean, I'm not a musician, and I really can't tell you more about how to play or how it evolved, but it's a very different style than the mariachi or the banda, and they people played in wooden instruments, that it took a genius to invent and to hit it with a little stick, and then make a sound out of it. It's kind of like the piano, but it's different. But you will find it. I mean, I have, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 different albums of música de marimba, and it's very different than the mariachi or the norteño. I mean, it could be from, you go to the north of Mexico to the very south, and the styles are totally different.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Don't be shy, y'all. Let's hear your powerful voices.
Yeah, there you go. So do you have some questions? Do you have some, some things going through your mind as, when your parents, I also teach Chicano studies, and although this semester I'm not because of the pandemic, but one of the things that I ask the students to do is, as one of the assignments, is to interview one of their elders about their experiences crossing the border or living in Mexico or whatever it is. Another assignment, and when I teach a folklore class, is to ask them to interview one of your elders and record it if it's possible, and if they allowed you to do that, and let them tell you a myth, a story, a cuento, something that happened in their community that is told and shared within their family, maybe a family history, maybe something about yourself, maybe something about their parents, and it is through that mechanism of oral history. Our parents, your parents, have a lot to say, but no one has recorded them. And I tell my students, you have an opportunity here to do that, record your family history and record your family stories because they're there. You just have to ask your mom and your dad or your abuelo to help you do that. Ahí están.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking about parents, we did have a couple of dads pop in the background, and I absolutely love that because they heard corridos and like, what are you listening to? So I love that. And just so you all know, like, your families are always welcome to join these classes. You already know you have access to the YouTube channel, so you can share these recordings with your friends and families. But anybody want to speak to that? Like, what are your dads saying in the background? Either Alex or Jessica.
My dad, like, he overheard. He was
Oh,
like,
sorry.
oh, you go ahead, Jessica. I saw your dad first. You go first.
Okay. So my dad was like super excited. Like, me estaba preguntando de todo. He's like, ¿por qué te están diciendo eso? Qué bonito que, like, que tu escuela, like, tenga eso, like, para no se te olviden de tus raíces y todo. Like, he was super happy. And he even asked, he's like, esa es la maestra, ¿verdad? I was like, sí, esa es la maestra. Y luego él vino a hablar con nuestro salón. He was super happy. He was super interested. He had to leave right now, but he's like, ahorita vengo bien rápido. He was so happy.
I love it. And yes, like Cirenio saying, please take time to have conversations with your parents, your grandparents, your tias, your tios, because they have so many amazing stories, and record them, just put them on Zoom and just start recording that. And oh, that's a treasure right there. Alex, what do you want to share?
I'll share with you before I do that. In 2007, I asked my sisters, I have 9 of them, to write the recuerdos of their life, and we have a family history book that we published ourselves. We did it ourselves. Each one of my sisters wrote something, and then I wrote this in 2001, of stories, cuentos e historias de la familia, stories that I would hear my daddy or my grandpa tell, and I knew they were there, and I had memorized them, and I decided one day I'm just gonna sit down and write them. And to las señoritas que se presentaron, las compañeras, your parents have stories to tell. You have the instrument of the computer, record them, ask them, and just put it on and let them loose, tell stories about their community, their families, and it's very rich. We come from a very, working class individuals. And in 2007, I said, what am I going to give my sisters of Christmas present? Well, I gave them this, the book, Cuentos and Historia de la Familia. And it's more valuable than any other gift that I would have given them for Christmas, because they still have the book. They still have it.
That's beautiful. That is an awesome idea. Alex, I still want to hear from you. Share about your dad.
Oh, so he overheard, he's like, you're listening to corridos y eso? And I was just like, oh my God, be quiet. I'm trying to listen. But no, I actually wanted to share a story about, because my dad used to work in the field. He worked for over 30 years, and then he changed jobs. But there's this one story that he told me that before CSUCI became a school, it was a mental hospital. And he said that in that time, I think it was in the 90s, he said que estaban creciendo lechuga out back. So he said that all the campesinos and everybody, they would play their corridos y salían los patients. They would come out running from the nurses because they heard the music and they wanted to come out and dance with them and like sing. And then my dad's like, yeah, like, he's like, salían todos los loquitos. And I'm like, Dad, that's not how you say it. But they would come out because they would hear the music and they wanted to just be out there listening with them. And then so my dad said he would give them heads of lettuce to like get them to go back inside. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share. That corridos is like super important to him, and it was so funny when he popped his head in. Like I've never seen him that happy before.
You know, probably what he did saved many lives. I mean, the people, I mean, they heard the corridos, that they identify with it, and it, you know, for those those moments, you know, it was moments of happiness for somebody who
Yeah.
was locked up in una casa, you know, that who knows what happened there.
Yeah,
That
that is an amazing story, Alex. And I would say that you should write that story, document that story, even record your dad on video, and then we should archive it in the library at CI. That is an awesome story. It should be archived, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'll talk to this shy man. He's very shy, but I think I can convince him.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so thank you again, Cirenio. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our next guest speaker, but Cirenio, that was awesome. Muchísimas gracias for all the years that you have dedicated to our community and to our people and to documenting history and then teaching for so many years. And you're still very involved in the community and in the field of education. I see him at conferences that have to do with education, and he's just always, you know, so involved. So I appreciate you very much, and thank you for taking time to be with us.
celebrated my 53rd year teaching. So, you know.
Whoa, that's dedication. Thank you. Okay,
Gracias.
a ti. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our next guest speaker, who is Jose Cano. He is the second child of immigrant parents from Jalisco, Mexico. Jose was born and raised in Oxnard, California. He is a founding member of the East LA band, Las Cafeteras, and has toured extensively over the last 10 years all over the US and Canada, as well as several other countries abroad. He first started playing music in the middle school concert band. His first drum kit came in high school after watching some friends play at a family party, and it's all about holding down the beat ever since. Afrobeat, reggae, funk, R&B are some of his main rhythm and drumming influences. Jose holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from California State University, Los Angeles. And before dedicating himself to music full time, he worked as a freelance designer engineer while attempting to start several businesses. Some worked, most didn't, until finally the right opportunity came. Sustainable living, the Dharma, running, biking, swimming in the ocean, boxing, community, art, and culture are among some of his passions. Jose currently owns and operates his own recording studio in Oxnard and is more active than ever writing and recording music. Jose, thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here. Students, it's y'all are inspiring. I know it's a difficult time. I was a student many years ago, and I can't imagine what it'd be like to learn from your laptops. It's crazy. So keep pushing. It's y'all will come out on the other end. I think before I kind of get started with some of the stuff that I want to talk about, like I did want to mention Cirenio about like what you said about encouraging recording your family members. I did that with my grandmother before she passed, and she was in Mexico, and I took a little little recording device, and I got to spend a couple of days with her and just ask her all of these questions, and I got to learn so much about like several generations back about my family members and who was who and who did what, and like there's so many stories that like even my mom doesn't know about. And that's just a beautiful way of conserving like oral history. So I wish I could have like spent more time doing it. It's just but anyways, it was really special.
We have the technology, now it's like
it's easier than ever now. So it's a really special thing. So anyways, I wanted to mention that before I forgot. But hello everybody, my name is Jose Cano. I'm just a dude, a Mexican, young Mexicano, not that young anymore, but from Oxnard. Just been around a little bit. I'm back. I'm a musician. I'm a member of a band called Las Cafeteras. And this is a band out of East Los Angeles. We started about 13 years ago, 13, more or less 13 years ago. Group of just friends, just students of music. We actually, the origins of this band, and I think it's important to mention this, is how we started. We started out of a community center. There was a community center in this part of Los Angeles called El Cirenio. This community center was called the Eastside Cafe. And in that the Eastside Cafe was sort of like a totally communal, autonomous, Zapatista inspired, each one teach one space. And so they started giving free music lessons there. And those music lessons were Son Jarocho. And Son Jarocho is a style of music that comes from the southern Gulf Coast of Veracruz, where its sort of primary manifestation of this music is not necessarily on a stage, but rather in a communal setting. So really, like, what it is people gather around in a circle. It's a lot of guitars. There's a lot of like dancing. There's a lot of singing, and anybody is invited to come and play. Anybody's invited to come and sing. And dance. You know, there are some basic rules that you need to follow, but all skill levels can participate. That's what's such a special and beautiful thing about Jarocho music, Son Jarocho music. And it was about maybe around that time, about 15 years ago, that it started to be, you know, you started to see it a lot more in different cities across the US. It had a big resurgence some time ago, and there was a big scene in Los Angeles, and we were part of that. And as time passed, we started to, you know, we were excited to play and perform. We started as a group of maybe 9 people. We would play at different fundraisers. We actually got hired to like play like a wedding or things like that. And for us, it was just all about the experience, all about sharing. And, you know, fast forward many years, and now we travel all over the place, really all over the country, and to many other countries as well. Before, one of the things that people sort of mention when they talk about our band, about Las Cafeteras, we're often identified as we're characterized as like a political band, a social justice band. And you know, for us, we are just telling stories. For us, we are just really trying to share like stories about our community, about our family, about things that we feel are very important and valuable to share. A little bit of history about us, if we sort of rewind, before we became a band, before we started playing music together, we were all students at different colleges, but we sort of kind of like would cross paths a lot in different settings in the East LA area. And we were all involved to some capacity in different community spaces, community organizations, social justice spaces. And so we kind of already had that, like all of us, it was really important to us on an individual level. So when we did come together as a band and start making music, well, for us, it was very natural to want to say and share these messages because they were already very important for us. You know, I think a lot of the times we have songs that talk about love and struggle, and, you know, the struggle of immigration, and there's a strong feminine presence and a feminine identity. The band takes on a strong feminine identity as well. You know, for us, like, whether we're sort of categorized as like political or progressive or whatever, like for us, it's really, we're just we're just sharing these stories. Like one of the things that I sort of think about is when I think about my parents coming here from Mexico, when I think about all my uncles that came over the years illegally to come and work, to send money back, and then being afraid of being deported and getting the coyote to cross them and saving up money, and advocating for them. Like for me, that's not a political thing. That's life for many of us, and maybe for many of you as well. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, that's who Las Cafeteras is. We've gone to travel around to many places. We've gone to maybe 45 out of the 50 states over the last maybe 10 years. We've played for all kinds of different audiences and places never imagined being. And one of the things that's always been really special and that you learn more and more the more you get out there is that we have so many like different backgrounds. There's so many different backgrounds and beliefs and things that are important to us. And especially, right now in this climate, the political climate, where it just seems like we're divided like more than ever based on who you vote for. And so many times when we come and we just share as people, we find out that we have so much more in common than we have different. We may believe a lot of different things, but in the end, we all kind of just want to feel safe and secure on some level. And out of all of the places that we've been to very, like, for a social justice, progressive, quote unquote band. We've been to a lot of very conservative places, a lot of very like red states, and we've been received very well pretty much everywhere we've gone. We've only had a couple, just like a handful of incidents, and even those incidents were minor, relatively minor. And there's definitely something that's to be said about how music and sharing stories and being present and listening to folks, to the person next to you, what that really does to allow people and allow ourselves really to like open up. And so there's been so many beautiful moments, and like I've learned so much about how the power that music and art really has to allow us to learn about each other. Let me see, what else is I gonna say? We've done a lot of we started, because a lot of us were like community organizers and just different folks that worked doing some like education work already. We've gone around the country, and in addition to playing music, we've done a lot of workshops, a lot of storytelling workshops. We think that it's super important to do a lot of story sharing and story listening. There's so many different, what do we call it? There's a lot of things that we don't know about other communities, about other people. And based on the limited information that we get, we make judgments and we come to conclusions about people without really knowing them. And that's why it's one of the really important messages for us, is to invite people to go through that process. I think right now, Vero, maybe it'd be good to show that the Mujer Soy video.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I was also wondering? Would it be a good thing to show them like what a traditional Son Jarocho fandango might look like for reference first?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that.
I mean, I just pulled up like a random video, but if you have a specific one, I can do that. What do you think?
I don't at the moment, but maybe we could just check that one out.
Let's see if this one works. Okay.
We can play La Bamba.
That's true.
We'll just
Oh, that first.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly.
commercials, ads.
Yeah, skip it in a sense.
Here we go. Skip. All right.
There you go.
Hey, Beto, would you pause it for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is really helpful. It was a great suggestion. So maybe we can, I just wanted to kind of point out a couple of things, and maybe we could watch a little bit more. If you notice that there's a lot of people in a circle, and in the center of the circle is the dance, the kind of, it's called a tarima. It's like a little raised platform where people dance, and that's sort of like the heartbeat of the fandango. That's the centerpiece. There's one person somewhere in there, I can't tell, but they're playing the lead melody. They're the ones that call the song. They're the ones that say when the song ends as well. And everybody else who's kind of around, they're playing the guitar and they're singing. One person starts singing and somebody else will respond with the same verse. So it always takes two people. And when you start singing, you don't necessarily know who's going to respond to you, but that's sort of like the magic and the playfulness about the fandango. A lot of these people sing traditional verses. Many of them make up their own verse on the spot. They may be singing to each other. Sometimes one person might start singing and then maybe two or three people respond, and then they figure out who ends up respond at the same time. And in the end, it'll just be one person responding. So that's a little bit of what's going on here. Again, what's so beautiful about the fandango is that nobody has to be like a master. You don't have to be so experienced to participate. And that's what's so beautiful, with maybe other art forms where you have to be more versed to be able to participate. That's what really invited us as like beginner musicians to participate in it. And yes, sometimes they are a little bit of a battle. There's often times where los versadores, the people who sing, they get really clever with their verses and they really try to outdo each other, and it becomes a little bit of a show. So yes, that's essentially the fandango. Yeah, the fandango for Son Jarocho.
Contribute to that discussion. A couple of the things that I saw, and it goes, how it ties into my presentation earlier. Fandango initially was a fiesta, was a song. Excuse me, a form of music, and then it became a fiesta itself throughout the Spanish-speaking Americas in the Southwest and things like that. The other thing that I saw too was the zapateado. How they dance and they move into the zapateado, into it. And the third thing that you were mentioning is the decimeros. They use the decima rhythm of poetry to compete with one another, telling them verses that oftentimes they're insulting to one another and see if they can outdo each other. So what you saw in there is the competition. I mean, you saw a couple dancing and then somebody else came in, to see who can outdo each other in either in the poetry reciting or in the dancing. So it's very, very good examples of that.
It's like the original battle raps,
Exactly.
and even
right
now.
Yeah.
People, we had our own raperos, those days. And if you go on Facebook, just go decimeros, And you will find decimeros in Cuba and Colombia, all Latin America, and there's competitions of people that come in, and you have to be original. They'll give you a topic, and at the moment, you make poetry to try to outdo the other ones. And there's one very good that I like. It's a competition between a man and a woman, el pleito, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So you all can see, right? Like it's important to make the connection. How did hip hop and rap battles and dance battles and all that, like it's transcended over generations, right? And it changes with time because there's so much cultural influence, right? But just know that what you all recognize as things today, like they have roots from way back. And so I love that. And what I love about Las Cafeteras is that you connect the past with the present.
Yes.
So there's influences of those traditional Son Jarocho musical ways and instruments, and then you bring it into this contemporary flavor and the contemporary realities of us as a Chicano community and what we're experiencing today. So I love that fusion and like the time lapse going on at the same time. So
yeah,
the other video, or you want to say something?
just one thing that I do want to say in that regard is that, you know, like a lot of this music, a lot of the traditional songs talk about life in the countryside, la vida en el campo, in the Mexican countryside in particular. And there's a song called La Guacamaya, and La Guacamaya is a macaw. And so macaws are found like in tropical areas. And so we're singing this verse. One, like some people don't speak Spanish very well. And so we're singing these Spanish lyrics that we already don't understand very well. But then we're singing about this bird that nobody's ever seen. And so one of the things that we started doing is like, well, we started to make the music more, the lyrics more relatable to our experience growing up. And all of us in the group, we are Chicanos, born in the US, of Mexican parents. And so we started changing the lyrics to things that made sense for us. And even some of the beats and some of the styles that we were playing, we started to totally change them in a way that was more relevant to our experience, because we grew up listening to rock, to hip hop, to reggae, to all of these different things. So we just made a fusion. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. You know, there's always the purists and there's the people who like to experiment. Nonetheless, that's where we're at. Pero maybe we could show the other video, the live one. I think it's I emailed it to you. What did I call it? But this is I'll look for it. Do you have that email? It's the live show one.
Yeah, I think so.
So we can, it's 7 minutes long. I know we're short on time. We could probably fast forward it. If you know, for the sake of time, maybe 3 minutes in or something. But this will be like, it's kind of a nice illustration of how we're using some of the traditional instruments that we saw in that fandango, but we're doing our own thing with it.
Okay, I got it. So let me share that.
safe and be strong and be healthy, because one day we will be set free. But right now, you've got a whole house of mouths to feed. Time is really running thick. Can't you fit a breakfast in? Lucky if you see your kids deeper, take this moment in. Out the door and on your way, up you go another day. Got to be on point today and update that resume, cause this recession is a test. They're making cuts and now they want more for less. So if you start to feel that extra stress, just do your best and leave the rest, cause our ancestors did it too. Somehow they all made it through. Something that we all must do. Keep hope alive, you'll make it too. You'll make it too, right? So in case nobody told you on your job today, in case nobody told you on your job today, Las Cafeteras would like to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To our mothers who sacrificed to make ends meet. Hey.
Thank you.
And our fathers who faithfully take care of their seeds.
Thank you.
Now the farm workers, the food you harvest keeps us alive.
Thank you.
And our teachers training the students to excel and survive.
Thank you.
They get to new word auto, ne ujista warunyu. They get to new word auto, nega runyu. Dunching with no word auto, dunching with no word auto, dunching with no word auto, ne. Shangwaya, these are from cooks, waiters, and bakers for our daily bread. The TAs, assistants, and those teaching special ed. Bus drivers getting us to work on time. From DJs, breakers, writers, and MCs who rhyme. Students with 2 jobs heading those books at night. And the organizers bringing us together to fight. From the little ones doing their chores and homework, and all us under and unemployed looking for work. Bring it down, Cafeteras, bring it down. Cafeteras, if you're feeling grateful right now, say yeah.
Yeah.
If you're feeling good about being a KEXP, say yeah.
Yeah.
If it's been a long tour, say yeah. And it's sometimes, after all the work you put into every rehearsal, every piece of work you do to show up on time, running, going around to take care of your family, your kids, your neighbors, your friends, rehearsing every line, you just want someone to walk up to you at the end of the tour and say thank you. Say yeah! Put your hard-working hands up. Hey, put your hard-working hands up. All right, put your hard-working hands up and put them side to side, whether you work early morning or way at night. Put your hands up and put them side to side, whether you work early morning or way at night. From single parents making miracles each week, and to our elders for the truth and the courage you speak to our ancestors whose hard work paved the way. To each one of you out here doing labor today, to our indigenous people and our creator too. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, so thank you. Say it, thank you. Let me hear you say it now.
Thank you.
Can we get a little louder now?
Thank you.
Yo, say it for your mama now.
Thank you.
Say it for your grandmama now.
Thank you.
Yo, get a little louder now.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Okay. Yes. That was so dope. I loved it. Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful.
I'm actually wearing the same shirt that I wore for that thing. It was just total coincidence.
You know, I have a picture with you wearing that shirt.
That's right, man. I got a favorite shirt. Yeah, but that's kind of like that was some time ago. But as y'all can see, like it's a totally different interpretation. I mean, that's not even Jarocho music anymore. But for us, it was the expression that felt the most sincere for us and gave us the most joy and allowed us to really like convey the messaging that we really wanted to convey. I mean, that's really us, and it's not us pretending to be something that we're not. Not that if you play Jarocho, that's what you're doing, but for us, that was the most natural thing. And I think what's important is for folks, especially like the younger generations, to really find what's the medium and what's the messaging that y'all really want to say. Like, what do y'all really want people to know about you? What are some of the things that you feel are misunderstood about you? I mean, like for me growing up, I was ashamed of my name. I thought it was too ethnic, too Mexican. My name is Jose Cano. And one of the things with me is that I never, like all of the people that I thought were like cool on TV or whatever, didn't have names that sounded like mine. I wanted my name to be like Chad or Ken or something, you know? And that's just what I saw. But I was also never exposed to people really expressing their culture and the beauty in their history, and that's what I think I would have really benefited from. That I probably would have saved me a lot of trouble. And that's why I think like when you do that, when you share your story, there's a lot of people watching. There's a lot of young people watching you and what you do, who are gonna be inspired and who are gonna learn from you. That's why it's so powerful when you share, and when you really are active in promoting like the identity that you are and what's important to you. That we have so many misunderstandings and misconceptions about each other and about different communities. So yeah, we have to keep sharing as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, that's the reason why the classes like this, like Chicano studies or ethnic studies, that's why it's so important, because we don't really get the messaging out there in society as a whole that brown is beautiful, that black is beautiful, that it's okay to be bilingual, multilingual, that it's okay to have a hardcore Spanish name, you know, that it's beautiful to like bump your corridos down the street, that's okay. And it's beautiful. You know, I think a lot of us have those shared experiences where we grow up ashamed of that because of all the messaging that we get in this society, that we're so othered, right? That's the others, like, oh my God, you're trying to be that, you're you know, don't be so paisa or whatever it might be, you know, but we have to embrace that, y'all. Like, that's who we are. And it's beautiful. It is beautiful. So like I told you all before, like every single day, I'm always sporting something that is a representation of my pride, of my culture, of my gente, of my mother, my grandmother, like things that represent my lineage, because that was for many, many years taken away from me, from us, and felt like we were made to feel ashamed of that. And never again do I want to do that ever again. So I walk with that with pride every single day in every way that I can. So these are all the ways, but unfortunately, like a lot of us learn that later in life, right? So I see a lot of you talking about how you have kids and they're jamming out to this song right now. So make sure that you're raising them in a way to be proud, to never be ashamed of that, you know, and just, it's so beautiful. We should never be ashamed of that. So thank you for that reminder, Jose. We have about 5 minutes left. What do you want to do with this time? Do y'all want to do a Q&A with Jose? Do you want to watch another video? I don't know, up to y'all.
I have a quick question. For Jose, where is the craziest place you guys ever played that you did not expect to play? Like you were like, oh, holy, like what the hell? Like people in this area listen to me?
Oh man. Yeah, that's kind of, it's yeah, there's so many places. I mean, there's been, I mean, we went to Alaska earlier this year before COVID. And that's one of those places where I just never imagined, I wanted, you know, I never imagined going for that. One of the, like the man, it felt so lonely. It was Kirkland, Missouri. Oh my God, it was such a lonely small town, but I don't know. I mean, it just ranges. There's so many places where it's hard to point one. I know there's a lot of places that have brought me a lot of joy to play at, where there was just, you know, we were in New Zealand last year, New Zealand and Australia, and man, it's just so much magic to be able to travel and to share and to enjoy. There's people from all over the world, musicians from all over the world. And yeah, I don't know. That's such a hard question to, to answer, but yeah, it's so beautiful just to be able to travel and share. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Had a question related to that. Like, how is it that y'all got invited to go and perform in such conservative areas when your music is, you know, even though y'all don't say you're a political group, there's political messaging and a lot of cultural pride. Like, how did you end up in those spaces?
I think that a lot of people who work in the arts are often very progressive people. I think that I kind of think it goes hand in hand, you know, when you're able to appreciate art and culture and connectivity in that way, then you kind of lean towards wanting to bring in more people as opposed to keeping some people out. I'm sure there's spaces for everything, but it's often like programmers at maybe like a local theater or a festival who want to bring us out, or at a university. So they know that there's a huge need to have alternative viewpoints. And so they invite us to come play specifically for those reasons. Yeah,
sense.
because people see that there's a need. That's often the case.
Makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. Other questions? Look at the whole family. I love it. Hi, hola, hola, bienvenidos. I love it. Other questions or comments for Jose?
I do have a question. Well, first of all, I want to say you were great on the drums. That was badass.
Oh,
but
thanks.
my question is, what's the writing process like for you guys? Is it more of like a group effort, or like someone pitches an idea, or same thing with like the beat for the, you know, for the music? Like how does that go?
Definitely our writing process, it can vary, but for a lot of the stuff we've done, most of the stuff we've done has been like very collaborative, where some person, there's always some people that bring in more ideas than other people, and other people, like for myself, typically I haven't been the best at writing lyrics, but I can play. So it's a lot of time is just kind of combining forces in terms of everybody kind of brings their piece. And you know, it's challenging when you do that, because we all get attached to like our parts, and we all really like this and we don't like that, but that person really likes it. So it's a constant like negotiation. It is really it's way easier when you have a musical director, but then there's less incentive. People are less invested because, you know, we're all just doing what that person says. So yeah, for us, it's always been where everybody just sort of like contributes, and we all have equal say in terms of what happens. And that's kind of like that's kind of been like with every decision that we make as a band, and it makes it really challenging sometimes. Like democracy, like isn't easy because there's so many, everybody has an equal say, so it's challenging, but that's how we work. That's how we've worked. Yeah.
Great question. Any one more last question or comment? Now's your chance.
If there's not a question, I have a story that I wouldn't mind sharing. There was a place we were in, I think it's called Whitefish, Montana, and we played at a school. So sometimes we may come out and we'll have like a show at a big theater or something, but in the daytime, we might play at an elementary school or something like that. And we were playing at I believe it was a middle school or a high school, and kids are great. Kids, they get down, they jump, they scream, they love it. They're all about energy, and they're so willing to share their energy. And there was two kids that were at the front, that were sitting in the front when all the kids around them were dancing and all that stuff, but they were not. They stayed seated. And then the teacher or the director, she went up to them and said, "Hey, what's wrong? You two, like, did you not enjoy the show?" And then they were like, "Our dad told us that we're not supposed to like them, and that to not like them, but we really like them." And And it was so heartbreaking because the connection went past all of that stuff, all past what, like, it was just like we connected, but they were told that they shouldn't. And that was tough. That was sad. But that, you know, that happened. But it just shows the power of like music, you know, and art to just totally connect.
For sure. And even though it is a sad story, Jose, imagine if they were never exposed to you guys. You know what I mean? Then they would have never been able to cross over and transcend that boundary of like, but wait, our spirit just loves it so much, no matter what we're being told and what's being said, like our spirit can't deny that there's this human connection, right? Because music transcends all of that. And so I'm thankful that these kids were exposed to you all, because we don't, who knows, maybe they won't have another opportunity to be exposed to something like that like really shook their core, you know? So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So we are at time. I feel so like energized and excited right now. I'm just gonna like go and cook now, but I'm gonna be blasting some Las Cafeteras in the background while I'm cooking my food for dinner. But I just appreciate both of you so very much. You're just both treasures to our community, and I just appreciate you for taking the time to be with us today. I'm in such a good mood, and I really freaking needed this. Like, you don't even know how bad I needed this. So I appreciate you all so much. And students, it's always good to see your precious faces. I'm just so honored to also be your maestra and to just share in this virtual space with you all. And I can't wait to read your reflection papers. So today is Wednesday. I'll see you all on Monday. Y'all have my number if you need me for anything, okay? So take care, everybody. Again, muchísimas gracias for being with us today. If y'all want to unmute yourself to say your goodbyes and your gracias, please do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Gracias.